So, past few days, at least, I've been seeing some people having issues knowing how to read. Like this person, for instance, saying he looked at the stats yesterday. Stats do not include Antifa protest, counter protest violence, random instances like punch a N word, or violence against people wearing Trump hats, etc. Mind you, in the video that when the response from calling out Asmongold's ignorance, the data that we're looking at actually has to do with casualties, not crimes. So if you knew how to read, then you'd be able to figure that out, especially when we look at the Cato Institute's report. We're talking about casualties, right? We're talking about deaths, right? The funny thing too, when you look into Antifa for, well, the data, I looked up how many murders have members of Antifa committed since 2020, right? One. One. From a self-identified Antifa activist in 2020. That's it. One. That's why you're not seeing data. If it makes any sense to you, there's a difference between what a crime is and what a murder is, right? The words have meaning. So today we're gonna go over what meanings mean, I suppose, or how to read a dictionary. So, for instance, we have an example, the Bill of Rights, right? This was another one. This was another great comment, great example of what's going on. So, controversial, nope. Straight brain dead. Nothing justifies the murder of Charlie Kirk. The pros of the Second Amendment far outweighs the negatives, which was not what I was saying in the first place in the video that we're talking about here. It's a different video that has to do with Charlie Kirk should have practiced what he preached, then he'd still be alive today. And that's a fact. Because based on the clip that we review in that video, he says that, why don't we have security at schools? Well, why didn't he have more security at schools considering what happened with Trump, right? From a rooftop, and you're surrounded by rooftops, you would think, you would learn something from those past instances. Learn from history, which clearly none of you people seem to be able to fucking do. And that's what's frustrating, right? So this is the funniest part. Shows how uneducated you are on a subject. Well regulated in 1776 meant what exactly? It means well equipped. Brother. The definition of regulated from the Oxford Languages Dictionary has no similarities to equipped. Right? The word. This is what I mean. Back then, they used to have a thing called Latin, right? Latin was the root of a lot of languages. And back then, the founders, right? There were scholars. There were a couple, not even just a couple of people that were college educated. There were a bunch that were lawyers. There were all sorts of different trades. And I mean, there was also very controversial things back then. But back then, things were different because they saw things a little differently. But at the same time, when it came to the definitions of rules, it was much more simplified than it is today. You can take a look at my constitutional analysis. I'll link that in the description below, where I use this whole idea of a fucking dictionary to make sense of the Constitution, which, quite frankly, shouldn't be that difficult. That's literally the Supreme Court's job, but they're mostly bought and paid for at this point, obviously. So, as an arbiter of truth, right? Regulate, well regulated. We look at here. A well-regulated militia, right? It doesn't mean equipped. I'll look up the definition of equipped too, because that doesn't. Regulated and equipped are two opposite fucking words. Equipped means you're allowing people to have something, right? Regulated, past tense. We'll look at that. Of an industry or business, you consider it like that, business activity, overseen or governed by a supervisory entity. It's similar to a government. When we look at regulate, it gets a lot more simpler, right? When we look at the second definition, something has to do with a company or business activity, but in relation to society and the function of society and the businesses within it, it's the same fucking thing. Control or supervised by means of rules and regulations. What's a regulation mean, you might ask, huh? I mean, we can look at, and I will look at the definition of regulation, if that helps, but if we go to the Latin root, simply, it's related to regula, which means rule. You know what rule is synonymous with? Law. Right? Well regulated means to have structure, accountability. You're not, even back then, it's not like they're arming literally women and children. They're arming men, people that they believed were more sufficiently capable of fighting in these wars, right? At least that was the perspective back Then, right? Part of the regulation is not allowing people that shouldn't be using weapons to be using weapons because they understand that there is something called friendly fire and people can make mistakes. They had years and years of dealing with bullshit, and they took 3 years to go over the language of the first 10 amendments and the articles of the US Constitution. It took them 3 years of deliberations, of drafting each of these. There was originally 12 and they took out 2. And mind you, by the end of it, it was unanimous. Every single representative said yes, they signed their names on it. Unanimous. You can never see that ever again during this time because of how stupid people seem to be. So, well regulated, right? We're going to look up regulation. This is going to so difficult, so freaking difficult, right? Biggest regulation, a rule or directive made and maintained by an authority. Right? Well, what's the definition of a law? A law, right? The law, right? I think it's very synonymous. I don't even. Oh, it's similar to rule, ruling, order, directive, act, law. I don't even have to fucking look it up. And definition of equipped, right? Let's see equipped. Let's see how stupid you fucking people are. This is the problem with America: is the lack of education. Like the school system has genuinely failed. It's not even just the school system. Parents have failed because they don't actually expect their kids to know anything about society at this point. They expect them to know either a trade or some bullshit and just get them by. And then meanwhile, we have dumbasses trying to work on cars, end up fucking fixing them, which is why I had to learn how to work on my own fucking car. Because I shouldn't be paying so much in labor when people keep fucking my shit up. Right? I've been maintaining my own car for years now because I had to deal with mechanics. This is just one instance of the stupidity. And it's a little bit of a tangent, but let's see. Equipment, definition, right? Equipment, necessary items for a particular purpose. How does that have to do with regulation? All right, how about equipped? I'll give you some of the benefit of the doubt here. Equipped, definition. For a passant, supply with the necessary items for a particular purpose, similar to provide, furnish, supply. Not regulated. Right? And you're sitting here saying, I'm brain dead? You don't even know how to fucking read. Oh my god, Antifa, right? You look this up. Antifa is an umbrella term, and this AI, whatever. It sends you links to where it's getting the information. It's getting it from the internet. It's obvious, right? Umbrella term for a diffuse, leaderless network of radical left-wing activist groups. Oh, this is very, very similar, by the way. If you look up, this is another tangent that I've been throwing around. Weimar Republic. What did they do in the Weimar Republic? You might be wondering why I'm pulling this up right now. Because maybe it's important to read and understand history. Again, in the context of the founders, right? Latin, habeas corpus, right? They use Latin terms when they're writing this because that is what they knew. They understood the relativity of roots to the definitions of the meanings of the fucking words. They understood the importance of words, which is why they wrote what they wrote on the fucking piece of paper. Oh my god, it's up for interpretation. It's right there. The only interpretation is the bullshit posturing that's coming out of people that want to game you. That want to game the system, that want to manipulate you and make you believe otherwise because you're too fucking stupid to think for yourself. Oh my god. And then people wonder why I'm obviously I'm giving these people back the same exact treatment that they're giving me, for one. Because that's the best that you deserve at that point. If you're going to come at me, not with even statistics. Not a single person in these YouTube comments in my videos have come with proper statistics. Like that guy that was like saying, oh, what about the Antifa crimes and stuff like that? We just looked at it. There was one. You look at the data when it comes to, and I'll go back to the Weimar shit. Look at the data, right? Since 2020, right? Murders and politically motivated terrorism since 2020. This is why I was looking at it. 44 from the right-wing ideology. 44 deaths. One Antifa. You think the numbers fucking math there, right? That one in the Antifa is right here, out of the 18 in the left, since 2020. And when you compare this since 1975, so a span from 5 years compared to a span of 50 years, it's still barely fucking incomparable. It just seems so much more ridiculous and so much more tenuous because it's so easy to see this shit. Back then, you had to rely on newspapers. You didn't really have good TV networks. You didn't have everyone locked in all the time on the internet. They didn't have a phone with them all the time to see this shit. It just seems like it's so extreme because it's so easy to see it. It's so easy to perceive it, which we'll go over censorship and as well as desensitization of society next week. I have a whole topic laid out for that. But this is the point, right? You people are too fucking stupid to think for yourselves, to look anything up. You're saying, oh, Antifa's doing this. Antifa didn't do shit. Yeah, they burned a couple of cars. People that were under the banner of being against stupidity and ignorance to such a caliber, to a point that is detrimental to the balance of society, right? The balance to education, right? Because clearly you people don't understand shit. And this is why I'm here letting you know that you're a dumbass. So we'll go back to the Weimar Republic. Why do I bring this up? Because in the Weimar Republic, before the Nazis really took control, because this is the truth, right? Decline and fall, rise of extremism. So this is similar to what we're dealing with here. The Great Depression, as well as, where is it here? Because here, anyone that was adverse to anything that they wanted to do, which now every time I seem to look it up, more and more information is getting taken away. Wow, this is so interesting. Weimar Republic. Adversary. Sure. I would say the propaganda, I might have to look that up as well. But left-wing adversaries, right? They would label them as communists, the Communist Party of Germany, right? Independent social democracy, right? The Democratic Party. Okay, these words have meaning, but obviously in the Weimar Republic, they were saying things like these communists are violent. They and their associated paramilitary groups were a significant source of instability and political violence, which granted there were instances, but for every instance they would just use it as propaganda. The anti-Semitic and racist groups, I mean, come on. You see what's happening with immigration, you see the profiling that's happening, and you can't make the connection because, I mean, Jewish people look different than friggin' Spanish people. No shit, right? But it's similar. And then when you go to look at the Declaration of Independence, there's parts in the grievances, which I go over again in the constitutional analysis. The Declaration of Independence serves as, I mean, the foundation of the country, for one, why the country even became to existence, and two, the reason why the U.S. Constitution was even drafted in the first place. All of these grievances are reflected in the U.S. Constitution through the laws, through the articles, right, through the amendments. They were addressed. All this was addressed. And one of them, well, a few things, he has endeavored to prevent the population of these states for that purpose, right? Purposely putting down the population, right? Population control. He was doing that by obstructing the laws of naturalization of foreigners. What happened with the visas, right? What happened with the asylum seekers? What happened with it's so simple. If you know how to read, if you know how to take the time, like, instead of assuming what a word means, you look it up, right? You learn this in grade school, I would hope. But this is the other problem, is that there's been such a war on education. It went from Bush's No Child Left Behind to Every Child is Left Behind. Fundamentally. It's so stupid. So, as we calm down a little bit, and we look at just this dumbass statements, people think it is well equipped. This has been an argument for literally decades. Decades of people have assumed that regulated means well equipped. It doesn't. Okay? It doesn't. Not in any dictionary, no matter the time. If you really want to go back to, alright, what did regulation mean in, I don't know, 1776? To regulate meant to organize, discipline, and ensure something was in an effective, proper working order. Do you see equip there? Right? Organize, discipline, and ensure something was an effective, like a law, right? Like a regulation, regulatory state, you know. The phrase well regulated in the context of the militia referred to a force that was well organized, trained, and efficient. Well regulated. Also synonymous with laws. Orders, right? Not if they were equipped or not if they could have a gun, but if they knew what to do with it when the time came. That they followed the laws that were in place from the government. Modern versus historical. This contrasts with the modern sense of a regulatory state, which involves ongoing governmental control. This is where people seem to be getting confused but then when you look at just the fucking definition of the word, regulators, right? In 1760s and 1770s, regulators referred to colonists who sought to address governmental corruption, excessive fees, and abuses of power. What do you do to, prevent that? You put laws down. You make laws, policies, regulations. Stupid. Even trying to give you the benefit of the doubt, you're still wrong. You're still wrong. They aim to have a system where officials were held accountable and followed the law as opposed to being corrupt or arbitrary. Well regulated. But it doesn't mean that every friggin' individual needs to have a weapon. Because clearly when enough stupid people have weapons, they do stupid things. That's why from the right ideology, you have so many people dying. Because there's so much ignorance. It's so obvious, but of course you refuse to see it like that, because you refuse to have any sort of self-reflection. You refuse to take a minute to be like, maybe I'm wrong. Let's go check it out, right? Let's go talk about these things, actually, instead of staying in your fucking bubbles. So, I mean, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Right? It shall not be infringed. You should have a right to bear arms, but it needs to be well regulated. There needs to be rules to make sure that people just aren't doing stupid shit. That the weapons don't end up in the wrong hands. Right? And clearly the wrong hands seems to be the ones with the highest number of freaking casualties. Because you people don't know what to do with your fucking weapons. Except for dream of delusions that someday you're going to get to use them on another person. Because that's what a lot of the fucking rhetoric's coming from. That's the two sides issue right there. That's where these issues come from. This is why Democrats for years have always kept the temperature down as much as they could. You can see it literally with what happened with Jimmy Kimmel. Jimmy Kimmel doesn't even say anything of hate substantially. It's just nothing. You can check out my other video. I'm going to put that up soon. But meanwhile, you have someone literally saying to kill homeless people. Make it make sense. So, I don't know. But this is how you learn how to read, right? This is how you learn how to do things. This is why we have a dictionary. This is why Latin exists. This is why they took 3 years to work on the U.S. Constitution to make sure that was pretty solid, so the democracy could last at least 250 years. But it looks like that might be as far as we're going to get. Genuinely, that looks like as far as we're going to get, because there's too many fucking stupid people out there that don't even know what anything means anymore. We're going to go over desensitization and stupidity next week. I'm losing brain cells. Like, come on, people. If you're going to come at me with anything, come at me with actual facts and statistics. Come at me with a dictionary, right? Just make sense. And even like when I'm not even like working up a script, I'm just saying what's on my mind, right? I make more sense than most of you people. So if you're just gonna sit there and say bad take, or if you're gonna sit there and say dumb shit like this, I'm gonna put you down. I'm gonna call you for what you are, and I hope that you learn something from it. And if you don't like it, then too bad. That's your own damn fault. Reality is reality. If you don't understand the truth of it, then it's gonna come up and smack you in the face eventually. I'm just trying to make it easy for you to understand that. Alright? We need more people to be educated. Not more of this stupid stuff. Anyways. Pretty much done. It's, like I said, it was short. Learn how to look things up. This has nothing to do with any sort of bias. It's just, come on, man.